We're going to be telling you the story of how we met in this episode, and I know you are going to love my guest today. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. You're listening to the Modern Motherhood podcast on All Mom Does. Susan Seay and I got to know each other several years ago. She is a mom of 7. I'm a mom of 8. And so when we got to meet at an event, the connection was absolutely immediate. And both of us were in a season of life trying to determine that, yes, we're moms and we love being moms, but we also had some other things that we thought maybe would be of benefit in our worlds. And so the two of us have really kind of had a journey together, if you will, as we have journeyed side by side in raising these big families and also in trying to help women. So I can't wait for you to hear from my guest today. She is amazing. She's also here in Austin, where I am at. Her name is Susan Seay. Susan Seay, thank you so much for being here today.
Glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be very fun. Now, you and I met many years ago now.
Yes, you did.
I was doing a big event back in the day called Immerse, and we had all kinds of fun people come through for that women's event. And you were at the very first one.
Very first.
And you came kind of charging down to the stage at the end of the event. Yeah. And I was so flattered because you said, I have to meet you. And I was like, oh, thank you. But it really wasn't like you knew of me. It was, you're a mom of 8. What? I got to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We're going to have a conversation about birthing and babies. But that really wasn't it.
Yeah.
What was it for you that you just knew that we had to meet?
Okay. I just sat in that room full of hundreds of women from all over the city. We had an amazing event. And then someone tells me, oh, do you know who put this event on? And I was like, have no clue. And they said, oh, it's her, Julie. And she's like you. She has a big family. She has 8 kids. And I was like, stop it. Like, wait, what? And I was like, I've got to meet this woman. Because in my mind, I wanted so desperately to connect with other women who understood and appreciated the privilege of motherhood, but also wanted to continue to honor the dreams that God had placed in their hearts. And they wanted to charge forward in that as well. And they weren't going to pull back and hold back. They were willing to go, and they believed that life could have both. And I was like, somebody else breathe that truth over me, please, because I believe it. I just can't figure it out just yet. So I wanted to meet you. I wanted to hold your hand. We were going to become BFFs.
Well, it was destined. Susan has 7 kids, and it's amazing because our children's ages line up pretty closely.
Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm.
And so we have walked really similar paths. And from that point forward, it's so exciting to me because you had all these dreams in your heart. Mm-hmm. You had these things you wanted to do. And from that moment forward, I've just had the privilege of watching so many cool things go down in your life.
Incredible.
Books, podcasts, online training, speaking. You have done so much. So tell me about that initial dream that you had in your heart and when you got going on it, and how things have kind of morphed and changed through the years as you have sought to encourage and resource women who, like you said, love and honor being a mom and also have some dreams that they feel like God's placed on them to chase.
Yeah. I think the important thing here to note is I really didn't know what this looked like. I knew I wanted something more, and I knew I was like, I had these gifts in me and these ideas, but I didn't know ultimately what I was wanting to create. And my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. We have our own business for our family, but there was something separate from that I knew was for me. I just wasn't sure what it was. So I knew that there were some things that were true for me. I was great at finding gifts and talents in other people and identifying them, really calling those out of them. I was great at encouraging people, and I loved studying business. And I wasn't sure how all that came together.
Right.
So when I saw you and I watched you just really shine, like when you're on a stage with a mic in your hand, there's a specialness about what you do. And I was like, she's in her spot. And I'm like, I want to be in my spot, but I don't know where it is. If somebody could show me where my spot is. So I've had people over time who will pull me aside and say, this is what I see in you. And I value those conversations because I think we need to do that for each other. Mm-hmm. When we see something in someone else, we shouldn't assume they know it. We should just call it out of them. Because quite often I think we're blind to the gifts that we have. We think, oh, everybody can do this. Oh, that's so easy. That doesn't even take much effort. But for someone else, they're like, that's everything. Like what you just did is everything. So I had some people pull me aside and say, I noticed this. You are great at pulling a group of women together and finding someone to come in who will speak to whatever issue or challenge they have. Everybody leaves more encouraged and enlightened on how to do some practical next steps. And then you move on to find the next group and pull them together. Like, that's pretty amazing. Can I help you do that in a better way? And I was like, I didn't know I was doing a thing. I thought I was just helping people that I care about. Like, to me, that's not a thing. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And that's where I had my first website, and it was called A Powerful Moment, because that is what people would usually say after spending time with me. Man, that was powerful. That was such a powerful moment we just had together. And I was like, I keep hearing this phrase. That must be the thing. We're going to do a powerful moment. And I went off and had someone create the website, and we got started, and I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, what do I do? And they were like, well, if you have a website, you should do blogging. And I was like, okay, what should I write about? And they were like, things that people keep asking you about. And I was like, okay, what do people keep asking me about? And I just know people were like, oh my goodness, what happened to her? Like, she was doing so great. And what happened is I was trying to do a formula. And I was like, I was doing something. Someone said, great, I see it. And I go, I don't see it. And I was like, tell me what you see. And then I tried to do exactly what they said. I tried to shrink down to what everyone was expecting of me, instead of just living out of my heart, which is where I was before. So I tried blogging, and that's when I realized that writing was not my thing. Like, it didn't light me up at all.
Says the girl who writes books.
Yes. Irony. Irony now. I get it now. But at the time I was like, this is not it. I love being with people. I love talking to people, and getting on any kind of a platform to be able to share and talk to people. I love that. And that has just evolved into this place now where I do podcasting, where I write books, where I travel all over the nation and sometimes outside of the country. And I get to share the tools that we have found in business that have helped us thrive. I show moms how to use those same tools to be able to manage their families well.
I love that. You said something that I want to go back to, because this is an area that I think I have struggled in the past, and it has to do with my definition. I want to be an encouraging person. And yet I think sometimes my definition of that has been someone's feeling a little overwhelmed, and they're feeling like maybe they're not doing as good a job as they want to as a mom, or whatever the issue is. And I have thought of encouragement as that place where I come in and say, you're doing fine, honey. You can do this. Just muscle up and buckle down and be good to yourself and take a bubble bath. And I mean all of that,
right,
with a great deal of sincerity. But you are so fantastic and have really built a business around this gift that you have of what you call calling something out in someone, a form of encouragement that is actually something of a challenge and is more visionary. And I think sometimes, at least for me, that's a component of encouragement that has been missing in my own desire to help people. So talk about how that form of encouragement, what that looks like, because obviously that's something that you could, I think maybe you and I have seen before, maybe spiritual leaders be sort of manipulative with that.
Oh, sure.
I'm calling out on you. I think you'd be amazing to be the volunteer for our media center.
For my thing.
For my thing. What does it mean to call somebody out into the thing that is their thing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love this conversation because this gets me jazzed. So I will do this with a woman in the grocery store. I am that woman. I have done this all the way up to people that I'm sure the people in your audience know. And like, these are people who've sold thousands and thousands of books, and they've got, all the clout and all the notoriety, because I don't discriminate. I think everybody deserves that opportunity for someone to see something in them and call it out. And I do it. And what I'm looking for when I'm in a conversation with someone is I'm looking for the moment, as I describe it, when they light up. And, as believers, we are called a light that's set on a hill, right? And he said, don't cover up that light. But so I believe there's a light that shines out of us, that unique place where the way we're uniquely created and where God connect, that this spark, like this beautiful light comes out. People's eyes get bigger, their voices get lighter. They just could talk about it for hours, and they get very animated and into and passionate about what they're talking about. And I'm like, that is your thing. But I think that because it's so close for them, they don't always see it.
Right.
So when I see it, I go, that is your thing. Now, I'm also very clear when it's not someone's thing. I was talking to a woman, and she is a writer, loves to write, and she spoke at a retreat, and someone heard her mention that she had had a stillborn baby. And the pain of that, she was sharing her story just in line with the teaching of what she was doing. There was someone in the audience who heard that, who had a similar experience, and said, I haven't found very many resources to really support me in the pain and the grieving that I'm going through. And because you identify with that and you're a writer, you really should consider writing a book on that. And so she said, maybe I should write a book on that. And the way she said it, it looked so burdensome. And like it was taking her back into her own grieving. She didn't look excited about that, passionate about that, just more of a, well, maybe that's what that was all about for me, and maybe I should teach on it. And I said, that is not your thing. There's nothing about that that lights you up. Where there's other people who can write about some of the most painful experiences in their lives, and it lights them up.
Right, right.
But you, it's not hitting you in that space. And as soon as I said that, she exhaled, like, thank you. Because I didn't want to go into that place again. I was happy to share that story in that moment because it meant something, but it's not a message that I feel charged to carry forward. It was for that moment. And I think it's great for us to identify that because we see people now, soapbox moment. We see people now who love certain hobbies and things, and people are like, you should make that a business. And I go, should they? Or should they just enjoy it?
Right,
Can
right.
we just let people have the joy of the moment? But there are other things where, for me, training and equipping moms with the tools I've learned, I could talk about that for days. And I do, right? I'm glad that I love it because I talk about it all the time. But I think that there's a difference between something that you want to carry forward and you're willing to invest hours and hours in, and that thing that is your own thing because it just rejuvenates you, and that thing that's part of your life, and there are moments when you'll share it, and there are moments when it just is your own personal story that you get to carry.
I think that's really powerful because often you're right. We experience something in our lives, or we do have a hobby or something we enjoy, and we believe that has to be the driving passion. And sometimes there is that blend. Sometimes there is. Mm-hmm. But I love that you say that because one of the things that's been interesting within my journey has been, I totally get why people are fascinated with the 8-kid thing. I love talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I did a book on parenting. But there's also this other component of me that says, you know, there are other things that I'm really passionate about that I would love to sow into somebody's life. And I don't mind at all addressing the interest over the family and the size of the family and why. Mm-hmm. But I also have these other things that I want to break out and do. Mm-hmm. Now, talk to me about this. One of the things that I find really interesting today for those of us who are believers and we're active in our faith communities is I feel like sometimes we almost feel like the place that the acting out and giving forth of these passions, these things that you love to call out and call forth in people, has to be executed within the church or has to be executed within a volunteer group within the church. Now, listen, as somebody who leads women's ministry, believe me, I'm very thankful for people who use their gifts within the programs that we have. Mm-hmm. But is it A, the church's responsibility to bring that out in you and to then use it? And B, is the church, and when I say the church, I'm talking about the community of faith where you meet on a regular occurrence. I mean, obviously you and I have an understanding of the church that is bigger than that, broader. Bigger and broader than that. But how do you navigate all those waters? Because I know for myself, as a ministry leader in a church, I oftentimes have women looking to me saying, I need you to tell me what I'm good at and where to plug in this church, or I'm going to tell you what I'm good at, and now you need to use me in this way. That's the church's responsibility. How do you handle that whole conversation for those of us who want to be engaged and want to be giving in our church communities? But are we kind of overburdening some of the definition of that on both sides?
I think all the way around, we overburden our churches. I just really do. I think we expect them to have all the answers because, they rely on Jesus and he has all the answers. Therefore, all the answers lie here. And I think it's unfair because it's too big of a charge and responsibility because you've got people coming in from every different experience possible, coming into one place and calling it home and calling this group and this community family. So I think that there is a responsibility we have as far as our relationship to God to live out that faith where it connects us one to one another, right? But so much as we put a pressure and a burden on one another to say, I need this from you, fill this for me, that's where we get it twisted. So as much as I'm in fellowship and relationship with you and I see things in you and I call them out and I give you opportunity to speak into my life, I speak into your life. Together we link arms and are about the work of the church, this particular community. I think that's beautiful. But the second that I start pointing out to you all the ways in which you're not filling me, and all the ways in which this community is not doing it for me, that's where I think we get things all twisted. And for me, I love to say, the second that you start identifying places where you feel like the church is not meeting you, is the second that God is showing you that there's bigger purpose in you, go seek that. Because as soon as you're trying to put pressure in this one spot to meet all of your needs, and this could be the same in a family, this could be the same in a marriage, in a dating relationship, the second that you start finding all the ways in which this is not meeting you, is the second you recognize you have a bigger calling to you. You need to lift your head up and look around. There's something more you're supposed to be about, and you should go do that. But it doesn't mean that the people you're in fellowship with have to be at fault. They could just simply be a way for you to feel just restless enough that you'll go seek more and find out where that is.
That is fire right there. I love that. We'll get right back to the interview in just a moment. You may have noticed at the top of the show or at the end of the show, I'm always encouraging you to go check out something. It's called All Mom Does. And I just want to make sure that you're taking advantage of this amazing resource for the journey you're on when it comes to your kids, your marriage, your spiritual life, your job, your relationships. All Mom Does is this incredible community of women just like you, walking through so many of the same things. And you can go on allmomdoes.com. You'll find all kinds of fantastic blog posts, great information, but also check out All Mom Does on the socials because there's such an incredible community that is developed there. Women encouraging women, women sharing their lives. So be sure and check it out. I know you hear it at the top and the end of the show, but it's so important I had to just stop right here and mention again to you. Go to allmomdoes.com and All Mom Does on Instagram and Facebook. You're going to find friendship, inspiration, and so much more. Now, you've done a lot of coaching and mentoring for moms, and talk to me about where the line is between healthy accountability and mentorship. And where sometimes, exactly as per what you were speaking about just a little bit earlier, we are shifting responsibility or blame for the things that aren't happening in our lives, the progress we haven't made yet, the goals we haven't yet achieved. Where is the line between what we can reasonably expect from an accountability partner, a mentor, a life coach, the things that you do, and where we are kind of shrugging off some of our own responsibility?
Oh, this is so good. So I just had a really tough conversation yesterday with a mom, and I was telling my husband about it this morning, and I said, I don't know if she was ready to hear that from me. So I'm big on defining terms. For me, accountability is holding someone up to their highest potential. And so many people run away from accountability because they're like, you're going to show me all the ways in which I'm failing and I'm pulling back and I'm not leaning in. And I'm like, well, there's a part of that, but bigger than that, it's when someone sees your potential and they hold you up to that standard and they keep encouraging you to live up to that versus pulling back, because there's so many ways, especially as women, in which we shrink. I heard someone describe it as engineering smallness. And I was like,
say that again.
Phrase was like, come on. That is so
engineering smallness.
Smallness. And as women, we can do that so easily because we have our own fears, our insecurities. Then we have all of the expectations of other people and what that means. And we try to fit in so many ways and to get along and to put a smile on it, that we end up shrinking. And if you have someone in your life who's willing to be an accountability partner for you, and I don't mean that they'll meet you where you're at. I mean that they are going to see where you can uniquely rise, and they call you to rise in that area. It's a gift. Honor that gift. Now, when we set goals, as I talk about on my podcast, I said goals, we're just making it up, guys. We really are. It's like, please don't act like this goal is something that's so fixed and absolutely must be achieved. We're making it up. But in the midst of that, we're living life. So if you need some support to move forward, then set the goals, find someone who can hold you accountable, truly hold you accountable, and go for that as much as you can in a way that honors Christ. Now, if you're a goal setter that you kind of like mow over everybody because you got to get your goal met, if that's not honoring the Father, then truly this is your flesh just wanting to make things happen, and it's not about honoring God with your gifts and this opportunity. So there's a multitude of different pieces that are at play, but we should look for people who can support us and hold us accountable. We should be setting goals and consistently seeking God on what He wants us to do and looking at how we live all of that out in a way that honors Him every step of the way and reveals the junk that we've all got tucked away, hidden, because I tell you, there's nothing that has brought out my insecurities, my fears, my worries, my doubts than saying yes to the dreams that God has put in my heart.
Oh, that's really fascinating, because I think there's a lot that is so profound in that statement. You're right. There are things that we feel insecure that we haven't achieved yet. I haven't done this, that, the other. And so there's an insecurity that comes in that place, or we see other people accelerating and doing this, that, and the other. And so then we feel like we're not measuring up. But I hadn't really thought about how it exposes also when we start going for it, when we get in momentum and certain things aren't happening, how that begins to impact how we're feeling. I know you've had this experience. I have too. We both have been homeschooling our kids for a number of years and working full time. And yes, there are people out there who do that. And it is probably the most inelegant thing you've ever seen. Is that fair to say?
I think that's the best way to put it.
It is so, it's such a mashup of tutors and one day co-op things. And I mean, it's just this craziness.
That changes every year.
But when I see a mom starting out, let's say on the homeschool journey, and she will have this idea, she really feels like she can do this and she wants to do this, and she develops that confidence, and then she launches into it. And you and I both have had those tearful phone calls or those desperate Facebook messages saying, we are 6 days in and I'm drowning. because it does expose the places that you feel less than confident when it comes to the education of your kids, or if you're launching a business, or you're getting into ministry, or you're choosing to leave a career and come home. It can also reveal all kinds of insecurities as you chase after what God has for you. I love that you connect that, because I think sometimes we think, if I get on the path, the right path, the thing God has for me, then I'm going to feel like I'm right in the center of it.
Oh, yes.
And yet, sounds to me like you're saying you need to be aware there's going to be emotion that comes against you in that moment.
Word. Yes. The way I describe it is, as soon as we say yes to any kind of commitment or goal, that God has this unique way of sending us so many life circumstances that we call challenges, distractions, overwhelming sense of failure, and overwhelm of how do I even get started, and lack of clarity. We have all of those experiences of it, but I feel like God sends it to us just to ask us a clarifying question. Are you sure? Because it's basically saying, do you believe? Will you trust? Will you continue to say yes? And I've just clarified it down to saying, are you sure? And I just, I taught on this, Julie. Like I was teaching on Are You Sure? And then my life went bananas. It just went bananas. What could have gone wrong went wrong. What deadlines were being missed, balls were being dropped. And I was in one of my rant modes. I can't believe this is happening to me. Blah, blah, blah. And one of my friends said, so I just listened to this great podcast where someone was teaching and they said that, when life challenges hit, it's really just a clarifying moment to say, are you sure? And I went, oh, so you're going to throw my own words back on me.
Rude.
But I was like, that's exactly what I thought. How rude. But true. That's true. That's exactly what it's asking me. And all I get to say is check in. Am I sure? Because how many times have you said, I'm going to lose weight, right? I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to exercise and I'm going to eat right. And then someone's like, hey, I want to take you to lunch to your favorite place today. And you're like, but I'm not eating that right now. And of course they want to take me right now. How many times have we said we want to get out of debt? And then 3 of the 4 tires on the car blow. The dishwasher goes out. The washing machine breaks. And you go, we've got to spend money. But we just said we want to get out of debt. It's not that those things, like we want to call it the enemy. But what if it's just a clarifying moment to say, are you sure? You sure you want to get out of debt? Great. Here's some ways for you to clarify that decision in your heart.
My word for 2018 was clarity. It's so interesting you bring this up. And I have to say, there were so many things that happened in 18 and 19 and 17 and 16 that seemed the polar opposite of clarity. But I was not asking myself that question. Yeah. Are you sure? So you've brought me some greater clarity on my word for the year that I'm still kind of waiting on from 2018 for clarity. That's a really beautiful question.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the top tools that you like to bring to moms today in all this world of wherever a mom is being called to, whether that is to solidly be focused in the home without the outside distraction of chasing something else at the moment, or a woman who has kids who are growing up? You and I both have an interesting season going on where we have still children in the home that require more of that hands-on parenting, but also adult kids who move in and move out and move in and move out.
Yes. And we're not sure where
they
are.
That whole thing. So what are some of the top things as you think about tools that you have both developed or things that you wish you had known when your kids were more in that knee biter stage?
Yes. So the whole reason that I've gotten started in this is because my dream was that there would be this older woman who would move into the house on my street, and I would make my way over to her house and we'd have tea and she'd just pour out all this wisdom on me, and I would go, thank you so much for rescuing me yet again. I'm going to go back in there with a smile on my face and get back in the trenches. And she never moved in on my street. I just kept watching for that older woman to show up, and she never did. And I made one of those statements where I was like, when I become the older woman, I'm going to do that for these other young moms because someone should help us out. And then someone started asking me for help and advice and wisdom. And I thought, am I older? Like, when did I become older? I don't think that I'm there yet, but maybe I am. I guess I am. So what I love to share is tools that I learned in the business world. And one of the ones that I harp on, and my audience is like, she's going to say it, you already know it's coming, is for families to have a clarity around their core values. I'm not big on house rules. I grew up with house rules, and I think it worked for our family for that time, but we're in a different time, and I think we need new tools.
Yeah, we are.
And so core values, I encourage families to have 3 core values that they'll commit to for a year. And with those core values, they influence and affect every decision you make in your home, from how you spend money to talking about friendships to what TV shows or movies you're going to watch, what are bedtimes, like all the things that you want to do in the general running of your home. Your core values are what affect that, not rules. And I have found that when I go into almost any organization, any business, they've got core values. They've usually got them posted up on the wall. It's what they're talking about because they understand that if their entire team can have an understanding of this is what we want to focus on, then everybody knows how to flow and flex to meet their specific job needs. Because overall, this is the arching theme we have, these core values that we've got up on the wall. And when I've watched that happen, and I've watched organizations take people from different nations, different cultures, different backgrounds, and yet they still achieve a central goal, I thought, sometimes I feel like I've got people from different planets living in my house. And I definitely feel like we speak different languages. So if this tool works in the business world, let me use this at home. And it's been beautiful. Because now if I have one of my kids hit the other kids, I used to say, we don't hit in this family. That's the thing. And now I say, hey, is that according to our core values? Because our core values, one of our core values is love. Is that the loving thing to do when you hit them? Well, what would be the loving thing to do now that you know, or you're remembering that this is our core value? I went against our core value. What's the loving thing you could do now? Now, I'm not saying you have to apologize. Go make up. Go put on what is the get along shirt? I've seen that. Right?
Yes.
I was like, I thought it was funny, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, me and my brother would have still scrapped in that shirt.
I was going to say, that would have been like putting two cats in a bag with my brothers and I.
It wouldn't have been cute.
Yeah.
Like, we still would have been getting at it.
Yes.
So it just all goes back to core values. So that's one of them. The other is a framework that I've developed. And I talk about all of this on my podcast. If anybody's like, I want to know more about core values, or I want to know about this framework. And it's called the Intentional Mom Framework. And it's a simple definition for being intentional, which is having both the courage and the confidence to live true to your core values. And I really harp on how courage always precedes confidence. If you want more confidence, if you want to raise children that are confident, you need to give them opportunities to express courage. And those two go together, to live true to your core values, because all of our families were uniquely created by God and put together. They should look unique. The second we start trying to do things because someone else is doing them and they make them look so good, we're off path. We should find that unique path that's for us, and it's going to take courage for us to do things differently and a confidence to walk that out day to day. And I show how those core values are in this 5 priority areas and how you live each one of them out in those priority areas that we're all trying to manage day to day.
And we'll be sure and link your podcast and all your different resources and the website and our show notes. I love that you bring up this sense that, moms, you're going to have to dig in and decide what those core values are for your family. Now, I think that we do desperately want formulas. Somebody just tell me, if you could just give me a pre-printed and a cool, calligraphy, and we'll stick that on our wall. But there is a format you can follow. There's wisdom you can take a look at. But at the end of the day, both the courage and the confidence to say, we're going to set for our family what is important. And I think in my field, I feel that's something that's kind of been missing in a lot of the parenting and the books and the seminars and all the things and I think it's been well-intentioned, but I think there has been a real theme for many years of, we're going to hand you the formula for successful family living. And if you just do A, B, C, D, and E, then you're going to get this result. And I'm finding parents on the backside of that who just, not because they didn't care and not because they weren't passionate and not because they didn't buy all the programs and go to, they tried. But this sort of prepackaged situation didn't meet who was in their homes, didn't meet the generation they were raising their kids in. And you and I both are we've raised kids that were children in one decade, in the next decade, and we still have kids we're raising in this decade. And moms, we're here to tell you,
it's different.
It's different. You have to adapt. And so I think this willingness to do the deep dive and really grab hold of, God's given you the kids he's given you because he's going to equip you to raise those kids.
Yes.
It kind of doesn't matter how the next door neighbor does it or how that, very specific hardline parenting class taught you to do it. What really matters is, are you taking a good, honest look at who is in your own house?
That's right.
How often do you find that moms are trying too hard, just like we sometimes do in business, just like you said you did when you were, where do I go with this dream? And people said, well, you got to have this, 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 and this. And you chased that and kind of lost a bit of yourself. How often are you encountering moms who are trying to implement systems that the reality is that system is not what their family needs?
Right. all the time, because I recognize it in myself. As soon as I start talking to her, I go, yeah, I could see that as well. Because I can reflect back on how I raised my older ones.
Right.
And I keep saying things like, oh, I haven't done this with my younger ones like I did with the older ones. We should probably go back to reading those books I used to read to them and doing the activities I used to do with them. And someone reminded me, you know, that was for them. And that was for them. So let that go.
Right.
What do these kids need now? And we can all be tempted by the systems because honestly, sometimes we get overwhelmed with the challenges of motherhood. We'd love it if somebody could give us the easy button. I've seen Staples and the commercials with the easy button.
Yeah.
And I keep going, where's mine for motherhood, please?
Yeah.
Did someone steal it? Did they break it? What happened? And we want the easy. At the same time, we miss out on the journey. And it really is a process of developing us as people, the women, us moms, we're developing as we are developing and raising our kids. It is in tandem that we do this, and that is God's way. So if we'll yield to that, I think we'll find that the questions we have they have answers. But sometimes we're so overwhelmed and we're so insecure and frustrated that we miss the simplicity of understanding that this is all a part of the process and there is a greater work at the end.
That's beautiful. Now, you and I both are in Austin, Texas. I'm raising 8, you're raising 7. So much of our world overlaps. We are like a Venn diagram.
Here we are.
And yet it is still so hard for us to get together and have lunch or get a podcast episode recorded. But I don't want to miss this moment. And this is part of what I love in our relationship. I'm a Caucasian woman raising 8 kids in Austin, Texas. You are a woman of color raising 7 kids in Austin, Texas. There are the places there are places I can tell you that our lives overlap. There are places that I'm sure we have a different experience. So tell me what you see from your perspective. Here we are living in the same community, a lot of the same faith, friends and experiences. What do you think's different in our worlds?
Oh, so much. Let's just talk about our beginnings.
Okay.
I remember when you and I both met at a coffee shop and we talked about how we were going to get started. And we felt like there was this more that we were supposed to go for. And I was telling you, I don't know what that is. And then we both looked each other in the eye and we said, well, we're clear about one thing. It's got nothing to do with being a mom. It's got nothing to do with homeschooling. We were like, no, we're not doing that. High-fived each other. That's right, girl. Let's go see what it is. And then we met up a year later.
It's like,
and we were like, what is your thing? You were like, I'm writing a book. I was like, me too. And I was like, my book's called The Intentional Parent. And you just laughed. And you were like, I'm talking about raising an original. It's a parenting book. And I thought, what happened to us?
I know.
Committed.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, you want to tell God what you're not going to do. And then it's like, God's like, perfect.
Yeah, here we go. Sure. Guess what?
I'll be God here.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
You're going to go do that thing. So in that beginning, one of my biggest fears thoughts was I don't see any moms that look like me. Anytime I see parenting conferences, workshops, people who bring in special speakers to speak in their churches about motherhood or family, I didn't ever see women of color. I especially didn't see any Black women. And I thought, there's something to that. And the only thing I can make up in my mind is that invitation is not there. It's not wanted. I'm not wanted. Women who look like me aren't wanted. We're not celebrated. We're not encouraged. And no one's seeking us out. So I'm not going to go that direction. I'm not sure that I'm for the church. I don't think I'm for the Christian communities because I don't see me represented there. And the very thing that was in me to give back to the church overall, the overarching church, I was pulling that back because I didn't see that I was welcome and I felt like you were. Because I see women that look like you all the time. Yeah. So I could easily tell you, oh, this church right over here down the street, they're going to want you. They're going to want to hear your story. They're going to want to have your book. They're going to invite you in. They're going to want you to do workshops. But for me, I need to go find somewhere else because they don't have anybody that looks like me coming in. And I had to have encouragement upon prayer circles, slight interventions to get me to completely say yes to the call of God on my life, because I was very afraid that something about who I am, just because of the way God made me in this skin, was not going to be embraced. And I think that the church should take that in. That there are gifts that people have in their hearts, but simply because they don't see representation of themselves and they don't hear people asking for their gifts to be shared with the church and valuing what they're offering in a way that you're willing to pay them what you pay everyone else, invite them in the rooms, help them to be a part of the decision-making processes. We've got some real opportunities that we're missing, and we've got some real gifts that the church is paying a price because we don't get to experience them.
Absolutely. And, throughout our friendship, it's something that I'd like to think I was always noticing, but I've become even way more attuned to. And you're right. I would challenge somebody to go take a look at, okay, who are the last 5 women speakers you had in? And what kind of diversity do you see represented there? And take a look at your curriculum. How often have you seen someone who might be of a different melanin level than you? How often have you had that person in? How often are you having other voices? It was interesting this last semester. I had a gal in who spoke to my women on a particular imprint that we have, and it's not that this group has tried to be homogenous. It just sort of in some ways happens from time to time, and had a gal in to speak who's had a very different lifestyle, very different trajectory. And as I told these women at the end, I said, I want to be very clear. You may not agree with everything this person had to say. You may not really resonate completely with where their walk has taken them, but I think we are at such an important crossroads for us to be very intentional, to invite different voices and different stories. That's really what helps us grow. That's really what helps challenge us. They're those people we like to listen to because I feel like I could be like her eventually, or she's someone I would aspire, or whatever the thing is. Truly. But that can't be our only motivation for inviting voices into our space. And so I've just watched with all kinds of joy, getting to see you go and do and explore and be all kinds of places. And to my purview at this point, I would say you've gotten to go and do some super cool stuff that I haven't gotten to do. So I'm really thrilled with that, but I don't at all want to diminish and say that I still think we have a long way to go. I still think there are those places that, listen, if you are on your ministry planning board, or you're in a book club, or you are looking for resources for parenting, I want to encourage you to make sure you're not only staying within the lane you're most familiar with. And I would say this goes all the way around for everybody. I mean, this is not, this is for everybody to be welcoming and to consider the voices of others, even if you think that maybe their lifestyle or where they live, or, their racial experience is different than yours, to really take that moment and to be intentional, to be very, very inclusive. So
it matters.
It matters a lot. Susan, I love you dearly. And I thank you so much for coming in today.
This was awesome.
Head over to the show notes for links and more content from the episode today. And while you're on the interwebs, be sure and check out All Mom Does, an amazing resource and community for the season of life you're in. Come say hi to me on the socials. I particularly hang out on Instagram, and I'm Julie Lyles Carr there. It's so great to get to connect with you on the grams. I just love it when I get to hear from you about your favorite episodes and what's going on in your life and who you'd like to see as a guest. So head to the grams and say hi. A big thank you to Rebecca, our content coordinator, and Donna, our producer. I'm so blessed to work with these amazing women who get the episodes out each week. Be sure and subscribe and share, and leave a 5-star rating and review. That's the best thanks you can give our team. It helps get the word out about the podcast. I'll see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.